Hello everyone, and welcome to another of AllBright's digital events. Over the past few weeks, we have spoken a lot about building resilience, and today I am joined by the extremely resilient Gina Miller, who is going to share lots of different pearls of wisdom around building resilience into our financial health specifically, allowing us to cope during this time of crisis and bounce back from unexpected economic situations, just like the one we're faced with today, although I won't be able to resist asking her some questions about how she does it personally, because my goodness, what a story. If you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat box and the team will be collecting them. And so without further ado, I think, am I introing her, Courtney, or shall we pause for a moment?
Hello.
Is she there? Hello, Gina, are you there?
I am here. Can you see me?
We can't see you, we can hear you.
I can see myself, which is rather...
There she is. Hello, hello, hello. Gina, thank you so much for doing this. I was just doing a little bit of preamble and I'm going to move on to introducing you, and then we can get into the meat and drink of some questions about what should we be doing right now, thinking about right now, and you sharing how you're feeling. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome again Gina Miller, businesswoman, constitutional and transparency campaigner and co-founder of SCM Direct. Gina, you and I have done this a few times before, but just to give the very potted history, in 2009, Gina and her husband, Alan Miller, co-founded SCM Direct, which is a disruptive investment management company. And they offer low-cost access to high-end wealth management and 100% transparency on fees and holdings, more of which in a second. In 2012, she launched the True and Fair campaign, calling for an end to scams and bad behaviour in the UK investment and pension industry, and her work led to change in legislation across Europe and the UK through 3 different directives. She is a passionate philanthropist who set up the True and Fair Foundation, and she's done lots and lots of things. She is obviously well known to all of us. Between 2016 and 2019, she successfully challenged the government over its authority to implement Brexit without parliamentary involvement, winning in both the High Court and the Supreme Court. What an introduction. Gina, welcome. I'm exhausted. Now, how I feel we should start today, because I've been given lots of questions by my brilliant team, but I don't think that we can frame a conversation without talking about the financial uncertainty and the difficult times that we all find ourselves in at the moment. Give us your reflections on that. How is it for you? What are you doing? Where are you? How are you feeling? How should we be feeling?
I think everyone is understanding. Oh, first of all, I should say hello to everybody in the whole audience. And this is definitely an unusual experience. It's not the normal doing seminars, but and I have to say,
more usual over the last few weeks.
I was going to say I'm a virgin at this, so we'll go from there. But yes, I think like everybody, it's very difficult because the news, the bad news, comes on a daily basis. And if it's not economic, then it's from a health point of view, it's from a social care point of view. You know, it is, I think first of all, I would say we need to acknowledge the emotions we're feeling and the fact that we are going to go through a bit of a roller coaster and that no one day will be the same as the next. And that's both personally and professionally, because I have seen when the lockdown started, that people were comparing where we would go economically from an investment point of view to the global financial crisis of 2007-8. And this is nothing like the global financial crisis. That was a particular crisis that was perpetrated by bad behavior in the banking sector. What is so unusual about where we are, I mean, there's so much that's unusual, but just, you know, in the time we've got, is just 3 things I would say to remember, is that this is both demand and supply side. So normally you have one side affected, not the other. This is on both sides of the economic equation, if you like. Secondly, because we're in such an interconnected world, and we have such fragile, we're finding out, supply chains, that it's not like the financial crisis, but actually the other comparison is it like the Great Depression, Well, again, the world was a very different place there. We're so interconnected here. You know, the IMF's latest report that came out on the 14th of April, I mean, they're saying that in 170 countries around the world, we'll see an economic downturn that will have an impact on individual citizens' pockets. That is unbelievable. You know, to have every sector, emerging countries plus older countries, everyone will be affected by this. And nobody, I think if anyone tells you that they know what will happen in the next few months, if they know what a recovery looks like, in the papers we hear, you know, will it be a V shape? Will it be a U shape? Will it be an I shape? Will it be an L shape? Nobody knows. And if they say they do, then I think they're probably kidding themselves. But I think what we do know is that we are going to come out of a full lockdown at some point, probably sooner rather than later, because of that, those sort of powers that are struggling between, you know, money and morality, debt, as in DEBT, and death. You know, these are where the balances and the debates are happening at the moment. So I think, but there is an acknowledgement that we'll come out of the full lockdown into some sort of a skeleton economy. The big problem then will be, would we, if people don't abide by social distancing and some level of isolation, do we then see another second wave, which would then have a bigger economic add on to the economic uncertainty we're seeing now? So we end up with the uncertainty carrying on into next year, not just ending the end of this year. So we will come out of this to some degree. We will, I think, have a recovery of sorts. I mean, the IMF report, if I refer again, was saying that, you know, there were a few silver linings and they're expecting a recovery. The problem is no one can tell you what that will look like. So it is about now, I think, taking more or less one day at a time from a purely investment focus. I'd say by the time a stock, a sector, a country is in the news and in the headlines, it's almost too late. You need to have reacted.
Doing at the moment to protect our positions? You've got women on this call listening to you.
Yes, so I think if you start with those, first of all, I'd say those who haven't invested and saved and thought about things like putting money into ISAs or, you know, pensions. I think this is a time to really maybe sit and reflect on that, because financial health is such an important part of our well-being and our overall health that when we're very busy, we may either feel that we don't have time to look at it or that we don't have the confidence. But if anything, what we're seeing is that, you know, our future selves, as we get older, we need to have some financial resilience, and we need to think about our financial health. So I'd say for those people women who aren't invested, and I have to say in the UK, only 13% of women actually have a stocks and shares ISA. And when you look at how much money our male counterparts have compared to us, you know, the average woman in the UK only has about £5,000 put away for the rest of their lives. And that compares to something like 150,000 for men. So, you know, there is this disparity.
Is that a gender pay gap point, or is that an attitude point?
It's a number of issues. There is a pay inequality, which means that if you've got a gender pay gap, you'll have a gender savings gap. Those two things tend to be correlated. But also it's because, you know, quite often there's a number of different things, but in a nutshell, confidence levels amongst women and finance is still pretty low. And I have to say, I don't blame women for that. I blame our industry for that. Because for years now, we've been making platitudes. Companies have been giving platitudes about how they're more female-centric, they're more female-focused, they want more female clients. But it's the way they've addressed that. What they've done is think what they need is, and this is true examples that I know, is, you know, have a pink brochure or an advert that might have a man giving a woman a bunch of roses. You know, they've gone for the petty rather than really profoundly changing their cultures. And what I mean by that is not the idea that women need different products. I think everyone needs the best possible savings, investment, pension products. But what they have to accept, and we accept as a business, is that it takes more time to talk to female clients. You need to reassure, you need to use different language, different words, different marketing. You need to invest more in a different way and make women feel comfortable. And then they're very good long-term clients, because once a woman's invested, on average, they tend to be longer-term investors, wanting more consistent returns. And so in a way, they are the best possible clients for an investment house to have. And we have always found that. But it's about starting small. I think use this time to think about things. You know, conversations are happening in homes that possibly we haven't had for quite a while because we've been so busy. Now we're in lockdown. You know, ask your partner, well, do I have an ISA? Do our children have an ISA? You know, each one of your children can put away £9,000 a year under 18. You know, and you as an adult, each individual woman, you can have £20,000 a year tax-free in your name. You know, is it there? So use this time, I'd say, to just figure out what is in your name. Have you been provided for and taken all the advantages for? And maybe start learning some of the language and just looking around at some books on, you know, investing for beginners, those sorts of things. I think it's really important because, believe me, marriage breakdowns after the last financial crisis, finances were #1 cause of marital breakdowns after the financial crisis in 1 in 4 marriages. Now, it's already being reported that this is actually there already is a trend happening here where it's causing a lot of upset and is being quoted to lawyers. I've already seen data that's showing that lawyers are saying that, you know, finances are a problem. It's coming up very often in discussions. So I know, you know, financial health and financial stress is enormous on relationships, on families. So it is very much part of your well-being. And I think for women who are invested at the moment, this is going to sound really strange, maybe, but do nothing. It's almost the hardest thing to do.
Yes.
Is to do nothing. But right now, if you think, you will read lots of things coming saying, oh, such and such asset, such and such stock is cheap. Buy, it's called bottom feeding, you know, buy when it's cheap. Well, we don't know if it's going to get cheaper. You know, we don't know what's going to happen next week. I mean, today is a perfect example with the oil price. You know, today's a blip. It doesn't mean that the oil price is going to stay where it is. It could stay where we are for 24 hours. And then the price will start going back up. But that's just a pertinent example at the moment. But I think it's really important when we're in such volatile times, maybe read some of it, speak to your investment managers or advisors if you have them. Because the other thing it's a really good time to do is to maybe ask the questions that you put off asking them. And one of them...
An example of what those might be in your experience.
So the one of them, I mean, the biggest, you can't control the future. But what you can do is balance cost, risk, and return. Those 3 things in investing are really important. But it is absolutely accepted that the biggest sort of dent in any return you're getting in investment is your fees. It's how much you're paying. And companies can be very sly in telling you exactly what that number is. And they tend to have it hidden away in page 26 or wherever it is. But it's a good time to say to your manager or advisor, could you just send me my total fees and total costs at every level, all added up in one number? Because when you get that percentage, quite often you'll see in literature it says it's 1%. It's never really 1%. Quite often it's that 1% is only about 50% of how much you're paying. So it's a good time to first of all find out what your true total cost of investing and saving is. And if they say, oh, it's very complicated, that's fine. Say you want it in one number as a total. And so that's a really important, good thing to ask. Secondly, very oddly, we're also the only industry which doesn't tell you exactly what you're invested in. quite often you'll only see the top 10% or the top 10 holdings in your investments. So again, ask your advisor or your fund manager, your investment manager, could I please have a list of everything I'm invested in? I want to see 100% transparency in costs, 100% transparency in holdings, so you can start becoming more familiar, because you might look at it and decide, actually, I don't like that stock or that investment because it's holding something that I don't think is particularly ethical. It's a good time to think about an ethical screening on your portfolio if you like the idea of getting a decent return, but also doing good at the same time through your investing. And you can only know that if you know exactly what you're holding.
Now let's broaden it a little bit and think about money in general, and how we deal with money and fear. Because we know from our AllBright community at the moment, and of course the wider world and the news flow that is coming through every minute, every hour of every day, people feel scared. People are worried about their financial future. Perhaps the least of their worries at the moment might be whether or not to invest in the stock market or whether or not to put more money in their ISA. How do you deal with worrying about money and the future? And maybe just reflect on that a little bit, Gina, from your amazing life story, which I've had the honor of hearing a few times, where there have been moments, right, in your own life where the roller coaster has been full of twists and turns that have impacted on your life, your career, earnings, how you feel about the world, confidence, resilience, of which you've written the book, quite literally. Give us the sort of emotional side of money at the moment, based on your own experience, your professional life, where you're dealing with advising people around their finances, often women, but your own life and working life and career.
I think quite often when we're going through crises, whatever that is, and we're doing a collective crisis at the moment, which is pretty unusual, you tend to assess what's essential. What are the things you really need to spend money on? And it's a time where you can reassess what's really important and what's not. Do we need the 2-3 holidays, or do I actually need one holiday with my family and maybe put something aside? The whole acceptance of rainy day funding is really important. And I think with this particular crisis, because we don't know if it will be repeated and we'll get different waves, as I talked about, I think it's about that really thinking about your own consumerist behavior and where do you spend money? Where can you is that bringing that happiness that you thought and fulfillment you thought that purchase or that spending would do? What is really important in those times might not be about money, it might be something completely different. But I think if you become too obsessed with any one particular thing, and this is what I found, be it your security, your financial, emotional, whatever, you can become quite obsessive. I think it's more about a balance. And I think if you think about financial health, money health, one of the things I'd say is don't think about savings. Really, really important to acknowledge, first of all, that financial security gives you options and gives you less stress. So try and think about money, even though it's not our natural way. We don't tend to think about money in a way. We sort of push it to one side. But, be honest about your outgoings, your income, what you've got saved. Look at money from the point of view that it's about stress alleviation rather than spending power. And also the fact that, do you know where it is? I think becoming familiar with your money, your ingoings, your outgoings, you'll really become comfortable with your budget, what you have. Because again, that being comfortable and understanding will give you much more of a sense of empowerment, actually, and control. Because when we don't know what's happening with our finances, we don't know where our money is, there is that sense of well, I'm not in control. And I think it's really important to think, first of all, how much do I need to survive? How much can I put away for my short-term outgoings? Think about really practical levels. The nice to haves will come when we're out of this. But right now, in my past, I have found that, you know, quite often the things that have gone first have been the beauty treatments, the shopping, clothes. You know, you discover you had clothes in the back of your wardrobe, which is practically like new to you because you probably haven't worn it for a while. And there's all those sorts of very sense. It's about common sense, I think, more than anything.
Very beauty treatment light at the moment.
I want you. You might have known it. You might remember when I once said, and how do I think I now laugh at the fact I said this at one of your events. But I think I remember saying something along the lines of, when I'm really busy and I'm juggling and doing everything, the hedge never gets trimmed. The things that go on beneath the surface just don't happen.
Yeah.
I think we're all in that place right now. But it's also, I think it's really, really important that we don't run ahead of ourselves. What I mean by that is, don't live tomorrow's stresses now. I would keep it much more short term than that. Because if you start worrying about what's going to happen in 12 months' time, what's going to happen in 2 years' time, it is impossible to deal with that emotional deluge. So it's, you know, think about here and now and a few months. It's probably about as much as we can cope with.
Give us some because we're all about the practical at AllBright as well as the inspirational. You obviously have tremendous mental strength, Gina. You do, and the ability to do that thing, which is, this is what I'm thinking about, and I'm not thinking about that other stuff. In your many different roles, but particularly in your role as the leader of the Brexit legal challenge campaign, putting yourself out there in such a very public way, dealing with everything that was incoming, trolling, the personal attacks, the how you. Of course, where we are now is different, and in a way, sort of, if we may say this, slightly sort of long for those times where
that was something trifling that we talked arguing about.
It was metaphysical,
yeah.
Whereas now it's very physical. But just given all of that and your experience of the last years, how can we do that? What should we be doing at this time to try and summon up all of our reserves of strength and focus and positivity, even when we don't feel like it? Because I'm sure you've had plenty of times, I know, when you didn't feel like it either, but you did it. Perhaps bridge a little bit back to the last few years and reflect on that for us.
It's quite odd. I'm finding myself in a rather peculiar place because, in effect, because of the sort of death threats and the things that I've lived through for the last 3 or 4 years, I've sort of been in isolation for 3 or 4 years. And my family and I developed a completely different lifestyle. So we were not going out. You know, I'd put my baseball cap and my glasses and run out to see the supermarket maybe once on a weekend because it wasn't safe. So in an odd way, we're pretty good at this now. But it gets better with time. That's the other thing. Firstly, I'd say it becomes easier. I think I can just share some of the things that helped me is there is a temptation to try and fill your day and fill your life with things to do. So the amount of people I've heard who are spring cleaning and goodness knows whatever else, I would do the opposite actually and think it's a good time to think about things that maybe you haven't been thinking about yourself, your children, your conversations, your books, your music, all the things you've put off that you've not done for yourself. It's a great time to do things for yourself. Don't just fill the days because you think you need to fill the days. And it's okay to just sit and listen to your own voice. When I do get stressed, I have to say I go to some good old-fashioned things that my mother taught me, which is I write my worries down. I have a worry book. This sounds very strange, but you know, when I'm worried about things, I'll write them down and then I'll revisit them later. But it's almost like you're physically getting it out of your head and out of your heart and just putting it on a paper and closing it and then revisiting it is quite a therapeutic thing to do. And I know people say, oh, well, you could record it or do it on a video, but there is something about physically writing which is quite different from recording or typing. And I literally mean writing with a pen. It has a different sort of therapy to it than actually recording and doing something virtually almost, or with a machine between you and the paper. So it is quite interesting. So that's one of the things I found myself writing a lot more than I did in the past. And I really enjoy it now. So one of the things when I was in isolation, you know, with this virus, with coronavirus for my children, you know, trying to explain to your small children that you can't give them a hug, you know, is a really difficult thing. And I know every single parent will know that. You know, how do you tell them that for 14 days, you can't physically be close to them or give them a hug? Because my youngest is very high risk. So we started writing stories to each other and little notes. And that was just, it's now become a game where we leave out words. So it's now progressed where we leave out words and we have to guess what the other person wrote or what word should go in there. So we've developed sort of games, ways of connecting with each other. Reading is really important, I think. For me, I don't, because I'm reading reports and quite technical things sometimes, I've gone back to my love of poetry. Because again, reading poetry is quite different from reading a book. And look at, you know, Maya Angelou, some of Oscar Wilde's poems about if you don't have love, it's like a garden without sunshine and flowers. There are lots of amazing female poets out there. And poetry, again, has a different sort of rhythm and emotion about it than books. And when we're worried, it can be quite difficult to get through a whole book or to get through pages and pages. Whereas the emotion that's in a poem can actually help us connect with our own emotions. It's much shorter, but in many ways much deeper. So I've just some of those things to do, but I have to say that the other thing which I find incredibly helpful is just talking to my children. I mean, I'm very lucky that I have them with me, but I think talking to friends, family, just because you're physically isolated. And I know some of my girlfriends are doing this because they say to me, oh, no, I can't talk to you now because I don't look very nice. And I go, stop that. It doesn't matter what you look like. Just talk to your friends.
Okay. Gina, we've got some questions from people listening in. One is, I've got quite a lot of savings wrapped up in property and mostly I'm mortgage free. I've resisted diversifying the portfolio. What are your thoughts?
Diversification is always a great way of reducing risk because some assets will go down when others are going up. The problem is the market, the property market right now. We don't know what's going to happen to the property market. So whoever's asked the question is very fortunate that they're not in a mortgage situation. I think if they can get whatever relief they can, but now is not a time to start thinking. Diversification is great. I wouldn't say it's a time to think about it right now.
Okay. Next question. I don't have an investment manager or an advisor. And you mentioned picking up a book or a beginner's guide for investing. Is there anything specific that you would recommend the women listening to read?
It's quite difficult because some of the books tend to be written by investment managers and who have it's a marketing tool. But I'd say a good start is a website that's run by the government, actually, called the Money Advisory Service. So I think that's a really, really good place to start, is actually Money Advice Service website. And just click investments or savings, because they have been tasked to try and improve our financial education. And because it's run by the government, it doesn't have that commercial bent on it. It's a good place to start thinking. But there are some really good as well beginner's guides, which you can just Google. There's some audio ones, which are even easier to digest because they're audio books.
A question, I work in the asset management industry, and it still strikes me, this isn't me, somebody else, I do this, strikes me as a very male-dominated industry. What do you think it will really take to move the needle to get better participation at a senior level from women and minorities?
I think this is a brilliant question because yes, it's true. I mean, I've been in the industry since '96. We've made incremental changes, but fundamentally it is still a boys' culture in the city. And I think this is an opportunity because after coronavirus, I think we are entering a new world. And part of that new world, I think, will be the idea of what I call responsible capitalism and corporates having to behave in a different way and cultures shifting significantly in corporates across financial services. And I think women have the opportunity to be a real driving force for this culture of change, which is about understanding that finance the city, it's not about just money, it's about morality as well. And it's about understanding that we have a really big community part to play in looking after financial health. So I think women have an opportunity to think about changing language in the sector. You know, when I talk about rather than if financial health is something I think we really need to start thinking about. I think start pushing for more education and further education in particular. And I think calling out a lot of the smaller behaviors, because one of the things I know with a lot of women I speak to who work in asset management or in the city is that it's somehow deemed to be weak if we pull up men or if we complain or we're moaning minis or whatever it is. Sorry, no, it isn't. I don't care how small the infraction, you must call it out, because a zero tolerance environment in the city will help to get women noticed and to change the culture.
We've in the chat, by the way, somebody has made a recommendation to the point on financial information of someone who's actually a friend of mine and part of the AllBright family, called Gemma Godfrey, who writes Times Money Mentor, and I would recommend. She's very, very easy to understand and very relatable and great to follow for information.
She writes good stuff on the, you know, mortgages, debt, credit cards, the sort of more what I call personal finance side of it.
Check out Gemma. A further question, I'm thinking about investing on behalf of my children. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the government have just made a huge increase. So JISAs, which is a junior ISA, it was only 4,600 around that per year, the allowance. From the 5th of April for this year and going forwards, they've increased it to £9,000 per child. So that's every child under 18 who you can put away tax-free, £9,000. And just think of how that would go towards, you know, future education, etc. I think my view is that because you've got a longer time horizon, you could possibly take a little bit more risk than you would normally for a shorter time horizon with your children's investing. But whatever it is, you know, you should, I think, diversify, look for consistent returns, not, you know, shooting your lights out and 1 year and down the other. But most importantly, ask whoever you're looking as a manager, make sure you understand exactly what they do. If you don't, keep on asking the question on cost, on risk, and on the returns. Cost, risk, return, that's the balance you're looking for.
Thank you, Gina. Fantastic. We so appreciate your time as ever. Thank you so much for joining. Make sure that everybody does tune in again to our Instagram and Instagram Live tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We are hosting our very first takeover of the AllBright platform by the female lead. Our friend Edwina Dunn, OB, will be in conversation with Dame Helena Morrissey as they discuss resilience, why we shouldn't fear failure, and what their life is like in lockdown. So please do tune in for that. Do get in touch with any feedback or suggested themes that you would like to see, or anything else that you'd like to hear from Gina if she would like to come back. Thank you so much again. If you miss any of our events or you want to see more detail on what we've got lined up this week, be sure to check out our IGTV and join our AllBright Connect platform. If you haven't done that already, why not? You must, it's free. Gina, thank you. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We live in extraordinary times, but how fantastic that we can get together and listen to Gina from our living rooms. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Gina, thank you.